So, what really makes someone an American citizen? Is it who your parents are? Or is it about the very ground you're born on? Back in the late 19th century, this wasn't just some philosophical question. For one cook from San Francisco, it turned into a fight that went all the way to the Supreme Court. In that case, well, it would define the answer for generations to come. Let's get into it.
It seems like a pretty simple question, doesn't it? If you're born here, you're a citizen. But this very idea, what we call birthright citizenship, was seriously put to the test in a landmark case that put one man against the full power of the U.S. government.
All right, so to really get the story, we're going to follow the journey of the guy at the center of it all. We'll look at the legal paradox that basically trapped him, break down the core arguments, of course, reveal the Supreme Court's historic decision, and then we'll see why a case from 1898 is, believe it or not, more relevant today than ever.
So our story doesn't begin in some stuffy courtroom. No, it starts at the port of San Francisco with a man who was just trying to come home. This is him, Wong Kim Ark. He wasn't a politician, he wasn't a lawyer. He was a cook, born and raised right there on Sacramento Street in San Francisco. His parents were immigrants from China who ran a business in the community. I mean, by every measure you can think of, he was an American. Now, check out this timeline because it's absolutely crucial. In 1890, Wong takes a trip to China and comes back, and he's readmitted, no problem, as a citizen. But then, when he returns from a second trip in 1895, everything had changed. He was stopped, literally detained on a steamship for months, and told, sorry, you're not a citizen anymore, and you can't come in. The reason for this? A really dramatic shift in the country's political mood.
Wong's crisis wasn't just some, bureaucratic mix-up. It was the direct result of two powerful and completely contradictory American laws just smashing into each other.
And here you can see that clash of ideas, plain as day. On one side, you've got the really inclusive language of the 14th Amendment, passed after the Civil War, which basically says, if you're born here, you're a citizen. Simple. But on the other side, you have the Chinese Exclusion Act, a law that was really born out of racial prejudice and specifically blocked Chinese immigrants from becoming citizens. So the huge question was, which law applies to a guy like Wong Kim Ark, who was born in the U.S. to Chinese parents?
This was a conflict that couldn't be solved at the port. Nope. Lawyers got involved, they took up Wong's case, and it escalated fast, forcing the Supreme Court to step in and decide on the very meaning of American citizenship. The entire legal battle, everything, came down to these 6 words from the 14th Amendment. The government and Wong's lawyers had 2 completely different takes on what it means to be subject to the jurisdiction thereof.
Okay, so Wong's argument was based on this idea called jus soli, which means right of the soil. It's the traditional rule from English common law, which the U.S. legal system is built on. It's super simple. If you are born on U.S. soil, you're subject to the country's laws and, well, that makes you a citizen.
But the U.S. government? They argued for a totally different principle, jus sanguinis, or right of blood. They claimed jurisdiction meant you had to have complete political allegiance. Since Wong's parents were technically subjects of the Emperor of China, the government's logic was that he inherited their citizenship, not the citizenship of the place he was born. So let's just break it down really clearly. The government's position? Jurisdiction equals political allegiance, based on international law, which would make Wong a citizen of China. Wong's position? Jurisdiction just means you're subject to U.S. laws, based on common law, making him a citizen of the United States. These were the 2 roads that the Supreme Court could go down. So, after months of arguments, the moment of truth finally arrived. The fate of Wong Kim Ark, and really the whole definition of birthright citizenship, was in the hands of 9 justices. And the decision was decisive. In a 6-2 vote, the Supreme Court ruled in favor of Wong Kim Ark. He was, and always had been, a citizen of the United States. Justice Horace Gray, who wrote the opinion for the majority, was crystal clear. He said the 14th Amendment didn't invent some new idea, but actually just confirmed an ancient and fundamental rule from common law. And that rule, he wrote, absolutely includes the children born in the U.S. to foreign residents. But it wasn't a unanimous thing. Chief Justice Fuller, in his dissent, basically argued the ruling was way too broad. He was worried it would grant citizenship to the kids of any foreigner who was just passing through, and he felt it ignored what he saw as the more important principle of citizenship by blood. So Wong Kim Ark won his case. He got to return to his home country. But the impact of his victory echoed way, way beyond his own life, building a legal foundation that we still stand on today.
I mean, the ruling's legacy is just immense. It cemented the right of the soil as the main way you become a U.S. citizen. It made it super clear that the 14th Amendment protects the children of non-citizens, even those like Wong's parents, who are legally barred from ever becoming citizens themselves. And so crucially, it confirmed that a discriminatory law like the Chinese Exclusion Act could not just override a right guaranteed by the Constitution itself. And that, right there, brings us to today. Because more than 125 years later, this very case is at the heart of one of the most fiery debates in modern America, whether the children of undocumented immigrants born here on U.S. soil are automatically citizens.
And the whole debate still comes down to that same exact phrase, subject to the jurisdiction thereof. On one side, many legal scholars say the precedent is clear. They point to other cases that suggest jurisdiction is just about being physically present, which means the ruling covers everyone. On the other side, some scholars argue the Wong-Kim-Mark decision was only meant to apply to legal residents, and that people in the country without legal permission don't fall under what they call complete jurisdiction.
It's incredible, right? The fight of a Chinese-American cook back in 1898 set a precedent that continues to shape our entire national identity. It answers the question of who belongs, but it also leaves us with a new one. As the country keeps changing, how will this fundamental definition of an American citizen evolve in the years to come?